I'm going to say something crazy. And I'm going to be open. This issue I'm about to talk about is relatively new to me, so I apologize now. My desire for this little bit of the presentation is just to probe your noggin so you do your own digging and diving on Google and whatnot. But the crazy thing is, I reckon Bitcoin mining become carbon negative. Ooh, okay. So that's instantly going to, people are going to, I call bullshit, you know, Carl Pilkington, bullshit. So there's a few things we need to understand. So carbon positive means you are emitting stuff, let's say carbon, right? Carbon neutral is, as it's neutral, and carbon negative is where you're actually extracting carbon from the atmosphere. Now, by the way, I'm not going to get into the whole, is climate change a thing that's forced on us by the government and it's bullshit? I'm not even going to go there today. Hopefully you can all agree that no matter what happens, from now onwards, those three letters, ESG, are going to be woven into our inner fabric of society. Nothing will be approved unless it's ESG friendly, environmental, social, governance. So I think Lara even said it earlier. Just add ESG bollocks on and you'll be all right. You didn't say bollocks, but yeah.
I more than likely did.
Okay. But so, as you said, we've got to play the game, right? Now, how can Bitcoin mining be carbon negative? Well, first of all, let's have a little look at energy consumption right now. So at the top, and it's just a small thing here, but look at the amount of power YouTube consumes. Oh, you never see people talking about that, do you? Or gold mining. But yeah, Bitcoin uses a lot less than them. And this is a chart I actually took from the previous cuddle when I was talking about the Ethereum proof of stake. So Ethereum now uses absolutely no energy, pretty much. So it looks like Ethereum and PayPal use roughly the same amount of energy. Look at the percentage difference, 0.01 to 0.26. That's a huge, so PayPal uses many magnitudes order higher than Ethereum right now. Anyway, it doesn't matter, that's not really the point. The point is, I came across this climate change tech VC, a guy called Daniel Batten. Don't know him, just found him on the internet. And I thought his blog was pretty damn useful. And combined with this guy, Adam Wright, who, yeah, it was actually this one, Turning Garbage into Bitcoin. I think that was absolutely fascinating podcast. And I was like, holy shit, I'm in crypto, yet I didn't even think about this. So hence, I want to prod all of you in the head. So the thing is, with carbon positive stuff, we are then being forced to shrink, right? You've got to use less of stuff. You've got to shrink into your hole. Carbon neutral, technically, you've got to use less as well, because it's not, unless it's full process neutral, then yeah, typically we're going to use less energy, do less stuff. But with carbon negative stuff, you're then, because it actually withdraws carbon from the environment, it's actually more effective the more energy you use. Does that make sense? And so if you have a look at, so this is a UN report, and then I started looking into methane. So methane, over a 20-year period, is 80 times more potent at warming than carbon dioxide, which I didn't know. So carbon dioxide is not really, well, okay, we're going into all sorts of different threads here. Long story short, when we look into this, methane heats the environment 84 times more than carbon dioxide, right? Therefore, if you can come up with something that extracts methane that is leaking into the environment, you're doing way more good for climate change, remember we're playing the game, than removing carbon dioxide. Now originally, I actually thought, what is the big fuss about carbon dioxide? When you study Earth over hundreds of millions of years, you'll see that it is very cyclical. There have been times in Earth's history, not human, Earth's history, where we've had way less carbon, and we've had time, in fact, the most vegetation-rich parts of Earth is when carbon dioxide was huge, like it goes off the chart. During the dinosaurs, it was very high carbon, the Jurassic era, it was very high carbon dioxide levels, which is good for vegetation. Anyway, but then I realized when you have an environment where carbon dioxide is quite high, it's the water that absorbs it. And the more water carbon dioxide absorbs, it then becomes more acidic, and then sea life starts to die. And then, yeah. So Anyway, so I thought, wait a minute, why don't we just use methane? Job done. And it sounds good on paper and in principle, but oh my lord, the rabbit hole I've been going down through the last couple of months has just been insane. So this is something the White House popped out recently, and it says, crypto asset mining operations that capture methane to produce electricity can yield positive results for the climate. This is from the White House. I thought, wait a minute. I would never have guessed that. This was in September. This is a new article. And I thought, interesting, because I learned about methane a lot more much earlier than doing that. Then I went back down to that Batten tech VC, climate tech VC, and this chart, this is his blog, by the way, batcoins.com, and this chart is interesting. So it shows you the estimated carbon footprint, and the amount of methane that leaks into the environment is absolutely insane. I know everyone blames livestock, which, yeah, is pretty big. Cows or cattle, full stop, emit quite a lot of methane when combined, but so do buildings, so do our general transportation infrastructure. But what really surprised me is that we have huge amounts of methane just leaking from landfill sites. Just leaking, just out in there. They used to do flaring, and flaring is where they literally just used to burn the methane, but that's not carbon friendly, etc. And so when you look at Bitcoin and becoming carbon neutral, there's a I think you need just 130 megawatts a month coming online from methane, and it does some big stuff. So 50, this is nuts, 50 landfill mining landfills will make Bitcoin completely net zero emission. 50. So here we go. 50 mid to large size landfills in the US, fully combusting their methane for Bitcoin mining to make the entire Bitcoin network carbon negative. That's not much, is it? That's the whole of the global Bitcoin network, not just the US network, the whole of the Bitcoin network. And why would we stop there at net zero? Why don't we just do every landfill across the world? There could be, if we wanted to, like Bitcoin could be the best, greenest thing that Earth has. And it's relatively easy to have a Bitcoin mining operation using vented methane from landfill sites. And then I was like, how many landfill sites are there in the US? Shitloads. About 1,400 landfill sites in the US. 1,400. That's insane. So what this guy is basically saying is that even without us going into overdrive of methane mining, Bitcoin will still, at a very casual rate, hit net zero in 2024. That's without the world going nuts, and because miners, they are some of the most innovative enterprises out there, right? Just think about all the shit Bitcoin miners have had to go through over the last decade. China's booted them out. Loads of countries have booted them out. They're constantly packing up their shit, moving to Iceland, moving to other places. They are run like proper FTSE 500, FTSE 100 companies. They're big entities. And yeah, so they are naturally moving towards methane and other renewable energy sources. We all know Josh Reddit is my buddy. He's using manure. He's going to farmers and going, right, you've got manure that's doing nothing. Just use that to fuel your Bitcoin mining and actually make some money out of your poo. So this is this presentation is sort of split into two. One, I just wanted to make you aware that Bitcoin, everyone's talking about Ether, proof of stake, being really good for the environment because it's using barely any energy now. But I actually think people are missing a trick. Bitcoin can actually save the world. Take with what you may from that. But I think, to me, that was rather interesting. And this is my very tenuous link to hydrogen. Because, I don't know why, it seems to be quite an emotional topic for some people already. And hydrogen, as in hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, they're not even, it's not even a buzzword yet, really, not in the main public. And because of my somewhat negative views on hydrogen, I've had loads of direct messages going, can you just explain a bit more? So I thought I'd quickly, as I said, I was doing my slides at 3 o'clock in the morning last night. So these slides are very basic. So I apologize for the quality of the slides. So first of all, we have to have a look at some of the pros of hydrogen and why the whole world is sort of jumping onto this hydrogen fuel bandwagon. So a couple of terms. FCV means fuel cell vehicles, so hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and BEV is battery electric vehicle, okay, just so you know for these slides. Now, when you look at it just from face value, you're looking at a fuel cell in terms of energy density and a BEV, so battery electric vehicle, the fuel cell looks like a no-brainer. You have 40,000 kilowatt hours per kilogram, which is insane, which is why a lot of these companies are coming up with supercars that will do 0 to 60 in 2 seconds and 2,000 miles on a full tank or something like that, because it has very high energy density. Whereas batteries, we have been really struggling to claw up that kilowatt hour per kilogram. Now, the industry average is around 300 to 350. Tesla breached 400 kilowatt hours per kilogram last year. Especially with their new batteries, with the tabless batteries and whatnot. I think Elon's pushing on 450. Praise be to Elon. So, yeah, it doesn't look good for batteries. But you have to look at the whole process. No one looks at the process. Now remember, I look at everything like an alien. I always, like when I was looking at this with fresh eyes, with no biases, I imagined I'm an alien looking at these two fuel debates and going, right, let's look at everything without any agenda. And so, I'm going to cut to the chase here. Absolute best, when you're using the best way to extract hydrogen and compress it and store it and transport it and convert it into joules going down onto the road via the motor, you're looking at a 0.4 EROEI, so energy return on energy invested. So you put a joule of energy in to create hydrogen and put it all into a fuel cell vehicle, you're getting 0.4 joules of energy on the road. Best case scenario. On average, it's really 0.2, but I'm being best case scenario with the world's leading tech right now. It's absolutely woeful. By the way, with an ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine, we're looking at 0.1, 0.15. I don't know, maybe Formula One teams will probably get 0.2 because they're whizzing around the track with one fuel tank, aren't they? It's nuts what Formula One are doing. But when you look at absolute worst case for BEV, it's 0.6. Interesting. So that's, by the way, 0.6 is 2012 Tesla Model S. 2012. It's come a long way since then. So when you look at the full process, it's like, well, wait a minute. Why is this big disconnect? Because everyone's always talking about, energy density and, FCV cars only emit water. It's better for the environment, but it isn't. It's also way more expensive. A hydrogen user will spend roughly 17 pence per kilometre, whereas a BEV right now will be 2 pence per kilometre. Many orders of magnitude cheaper, and it's getting way cheaper, by the way. And so you have to look at the full process, because I'm not a chemist, but I know a little bit. And when I first looked at hydrogen, I knew straight away, yes, it's the universe's most abundant element, but it's abundant everywhere other than Earth. It's hard because it's CH4. You've got to chop off the carbon. So you either do it via electrolysis, which is very energy intensive, or methane steam reforming, which is very intensive as well. So when you're looking at FCV, this is best case scenario, don't forget, you've got to charge up a utility-sized battery via solar, okay? And this is the most efficient way to do it. So you get a big plant, solar panels, charge up a utility-sized battery. Because that battery has to power the extremely energy-intensive hydrogen splitting. And you do that via methane steam, STM? Methane steam reforming. Don't know why I put STM. Or electrolysis. At the moment, methane reforming is the best way. Then you've got to compress it or liquefy it. That is insane. It's quite volumetric. So for hydrogen, you've got to really compress it. So if you compress it, you've got to compress it to roughly 790 ATMs, so atmospheres, which is very energy intensive. And if you want to liquefy it, it's just staggering the amount of energy you need, because you have to then store it at minus 252 degrees centigrade, so Celsius. It's nuts. So once you've compressed it or liquefied it, you then have to store it. Then you've got to transport it, you then got to store it again, then you've got to fuel the car, And then, again, there's energy loss, again, from, yes, you have a car full of hydrogen, but then you've got to convert that into electricity, into the motor, and then you're left with 0.2 to 0.4 EROEI. It's a big process. Whereas, wait a minute, if we're starting up here already with solar charging a utility-sized battery, okay, why don't we just put a battery in a car, or hell, we could send that to the national grid to charge cars straight into a battery, straight to the inverter, to the motor, and there's way less energy loss, way less. And I'm being as best as, and like positive as I can be for hydrogen, by the way. When you really look into it, it's an absolute cluster mess. So it's littered with issues. So for example, it's the smallest element on the periodic table. It's literally at the top. It's 1 proton and 1 electron. It's teeny weeny, which means it's extremely pernicious. It's so hard to transport, as in store. It likes to leak. It gets everywhere. And as I said, it's extremely energy intensive to store and transport. Yeah, I've talked about compression, liquefaction. Yes, and because it's quite volumetric, you have to have these huge giant cylinders. So if you're compressing it in gas format, the cylinders are massive. It's all right in a rocket like some of the old NASA rockets. You know those SRBs, the solid rocket boosters, the big one. It's literally just full of hydrogen. Whereas if it's liquefied, again, you've got to be able to keep it cool. Well, not cool, that's freaking freezing. It's highly flammable, as you know, Hindenburg and all that. But the key thing is metal embrittlement. So I'm seeing all these projects like, hey, we could just, instead of oil pipelines, we have hydrogen pipelines. But when you look at the amount of leakage you get in those pipelines, it's absolutely ridiculous because hydrogen causes metal embrittlement. So it literally makes metal brittle, and then it leaks. And you don't know when the metal is getting weak. So you have massive systematic failures like that. Everything seems all right, and then it just breaks. And there's different types of hydrogen. And this is where I'm getting towards the crux of it. So there's 3 types of hydrogen. There's grey, blue, and green. Now, grey hydrogen, guess what, is from natural gas, fossil fuel extraction. Interesting. So they bring up natural gas, and then they have to chop off the hydrogen from the natural gas. Not very environmentally friendly. You then have blue hydrogen, where they do exactly the same as grey, but when they're chopping off the hydrogen, they're trying to catch the carbon, and they're trying to reutilize the carbon. It turns out that blue hydrogen is even more damaging than grey, because you're using extra emissions to try and capture the carbon and then reuse it. So you're actually emitting way more. And then we've got green. Now, all of this only works with green hydrogen. And green hydrogen is where you're using a completely renewable energy source right at the top. So as I said, utility-sized battery being powered by the sun or tidal, and then that going into electrolysis. That is the only way you have a really good way to go about it. Guess which types of hydrogen the world is trying to go down? Grey. Grey and blue. Now, why is that? Because the oil companies have all of the infrastructure already in place to dig. So this, and I was trying to find out, like, looking at this from, I'm just an average Joe, looking at this, thinking, this is batshit crazy. Why the hell are they doing this? It's illogical on so many fronts. Until I got to this bit, and I was like, it's just the oil industry trying to kick the can down the road a little bit and not basically bleed to Elon Musk. That's basically it. They're just kicking the can down the road. And so they're then funding these huge projects. Like Japan has already declared they will be the world's first hydrogen society. They're going all in on hydrogen. And this is to, the oil industry's, delight, because they get to keep on drilling for natural gas. That's how they do it. They have to get natural gas. It's much more efficient, and it's actually better for the climate, just to use natural gas, instead of going through all the bollocks of getting the hydrogen out. It also has an invisible flame and odorless, so you literally can't smell it and you can't see it burn. And high leakage. And it's not abundant on Earth. It's literally Earth is pretty much the only place where it's not abundant. Have I covered everything? I think so. So we could just use the sun. No shit. Humanity uses 415 quintillion joules of energy each year, right? How much does Earth get from the sun? Well, we get all of that in an hour. So looking at it from first principle thinking, if I was an alien visiting Earth with the limited technology us apes have, I would be thinking, why are you idiots not just trying to use the sun? You have a fusion reactor in the sky that never quits. It's there every day. And we get all of humanity's needs within an hour. Now, obviously, you can then chop off, there's angle of incidence, and a lot of it's refracted by the, reflected or deflected by clouds or whatnot. Okay, let's say our margin of error is 100%, okay? 2 hours worth of energy, sun will power humanity. Well, let's say I'm wrong 500%, okay? 5 hours worth. Like, if I was dictator of the Earth, I would ban everything and just go all in on solar. Or not just solar, because there are countries which aren't blessed with the sun, like the UK, Scandinavia and all that. So again, you've got to use a mix of renewable, harvestable energy like tidal. I mean, we're an island, right? We have a coast all around us. We should be going all in on tidal as well. So yeah, you've got to be sensible. Anyway, that is my rant over. As I said, I just hope this prods the noggin a little bit. And to me, and it's not just me, there's loads of other key people around there, even Elon, saying that it's just absolutely nuts. It's much more efficient just to use methane or even propane as a fuel source. You can make propane fuel cells, and you can make methane fuel cells. I mean, that's what methane reforming is. They're getting methane, they're chopping off 4 hydrogen atoms to then make hydrogen. Why don't you just use methane?